and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Wednesday the 30th of September. And joining me on this edition, our assistant editor, Steve Withers.
This isn't going to have a happy ending.
News editor, Mark Hodgkinson.
What's in the box?
And audio reviewer, Ed Selley.
You're no messiah, you're a movie of the week.
5 stars. Really enjoyed the podcast. Keep up the good work. That's from Steve Baxter. And thanks for another entertaining podcast. That's from Melton Boy. Don't forget, if you leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, we'll read your name out in the podcast. Can't say further than that. In terms of current competitions, well, as this podcast goes out on Wednesday, the 2 Blu-rays are finished and gone, although we don't know who the winners are at the time of recording. But if you fancy a Denon AVR X2200 AV receiver, courtesy of Sevenoaks, that competition closes on the 20th of October. Go and try and win that right now. Okay, so let's move on to some hardware news. To kick us off, we're going to talk about Ultra HD again. It got us in trouble last week. I think the three of us, Ed, Mark, and me, we were too realistic. We were too
mean to Steve.
We were too mean to Steve. So, Steve, can the Ultra HD Alliance prevent consumer confusion, or is it too late?
Well, I think it would have had a better chance if it had been formed, say, 2 or 3 years ago, as opposed to this time last year. But I applaud their ambitions. What they're trying to do, based upon interviewing their president, is create a benchmark of quality for Ultra HD 4K TVs going forward, and hopefully unify certain terminology, and then educate consumers as to why they would want certain things like HDR, for example, which is a complex subject that they need to find a way of putting that across to consumers in a simple and easily understandable way. The only thing is that 4K TVs have been coming out for 3 years now. So to start doing this now means there's already a relatively large, installed base of televisions that maybe don't, or certainly in some cases definitely don't, get anywhere near the standards that are being suggested for both, they've already been agreed, in fact, for things like Ultra HD Blu-ray, and will probably be agreed for broadcast TV within the next 6 months. So, yes, I admire their ambition and their intentions and the reason they were created, but I do think maybe they should have done this at the beginning, because a good example of them not sitting down and talking about stuff is 3D. I mean, I don't think this would have actually helped 3D. I think 3D probably would have failed anyway because people weren't interested in wearing glasses at home. But if they sat down beforehand and agreed on a unified set of glasses, for example, rather than having different glasses for different manufacturers, and then having some discs that were, exclusive to certain manufacturers, and really making it difficult for consumers just to buy into the concept of 3D, then maybe it would have been a bit more successful than it was.
I think the biggest one was HD DVD versus Blu-ray. I mean, they learned the lesson with DVD. They all made their money. They all got their licensing paid. There was no consumer confusion. And then they went ahead with the HD. So at least we don't have that to contend with this time around, competing formats.
True. The problem now is not so much competing formats. It is all the same format. The problem is, I think there's been TVs being released, TVs were being released that at the time were cutting edge, given what was available, and things have moved on pretty quickly. And there are definitely TVs that people will be buying this year that won't support certain standards next year, in terms of being able to they'll work, but they won't be able to take full advantage.
Yeah, I think you've got to make that clear. I think you've got to make it clear that it is backwards compatible. So. Yeah,
they will work. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they will display obviously the full resolution, but maybe they won't be able to display the full color gamut, or maybe they may not all be 10-bit, and certainly a lot of them won't support HDR. So those are things that people need to be aware of, and there's a danger of it, becoming a bit like the early days of HD, where you had HD ready and then you had full HD, and some people were a bit miffed that they discovered their TV wasn't actually 1080p to start with.
I've got to say though, all the 4K TVs that I've seen, it's been pretty clear what they will and won't accept. So it's not like you're going in blind. I mean, obviously, maybe the consumer's not that switched on, but I wouldn't say you're going in.
The information isn't there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you do a tiny little bit of research and you'd know if that TV's going to do it. And to be honest with you, the vast majority of them, and we're talking quite a bit of money, so you would hope that people would at least ask a question or try and find out about the TV that they're going to buy, because we're not talking about cheap stuff when you're talking to 4K. What's the entry level now? £800? £600, £800?
Less than that in some places.
That's still a hell of a lot of money to most people to spend on a TV. So you would hope that people that are spending a bit more on that, they're going to do it, or they're going to ask a question, maybe not do research, but ask a question. Is this all I need going forward? And for the vast majority of people, it probably is, because for the vast majority of people, I don't think HDR and 4K are going to, and HDCP 2.2 and Ultra HD Blu-ray. I'm sorry to come back to this. I'm not being negative. It's just that I don't see the vast majority of people buying into those formats to start with. So I don't think there'll be initially this issue that used to be there in the past. Or maybe
I think HDCP 2.2 could be a bit of an issue. I think that is important. And there were quite a lot of TVs released that didn't have it in the early days.
And a lot of AV receivers.
Yes, and a lot of AV receivers. I think that is going to definitely become an issue with things like the BT Sport Ultra HD 4K box.
Hang on, Steve. How many people can get that box?
How
many out of the review team? How many out of the review team are able to get that?
Obviously, Ultra HD Blu-ray will require it. There are things coming down the pipe that are going to require it, and it's not supported by a lot of AVRs and a lot of TVs, so, and some projectors for that matter.
I think that there has to be a way around it, and I'm sure there will be a product or products that can get around that issue. And I'm sure there's one on the market at the minute.
There is actually.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that for a lot of consumers who perhaps aren't that tech savvy, that's going to be a bit of an issue when they realise they plug something in, it's not going to work. That's going to happen, isn't it?
Now, do we know what's going to happen with a 4K Blu-ray? Do we know what's going to happen if somebody does connect that to a non-compliant TV?
That is an interesting question. Would it just say something like not compatible, or will it just not work?
Yeah, I mean, we're all assuming that it's just not going to work, but I would have thought it would.
You get there's a built-in message already, like really blocky text saying, I've seen it on a few things saying it's like a blue background with red crappy text saying this is not TV, isn't HDCP 2.2 compatible. I've seen it twice.
Really? What were you using as a source then?
I can't bloody remember. It would have been a 4K box of some sort.
I do know a guy who has got BT Ultra HD 4K Sport, and he had the problem that Ed just mentioned, which is that his AVR was incompatible, which he didn't realise until he tried to plug it in and then said, oh, hang on, what's going on here? Luckily, he can get around it, but I assume it will be used on anything being released going forward that supports 4K, won't it? As an outboard device, obviously not things that are built into the TV
Yeah,
itself,
I mean, if we assume things like Sky's upcoming, something like that, with a heavy rollout across lots and lots of 4K sets, that's probably going to be a lot of fun, especially as if you remember back to the original Sky HD boxes where the first batch had component video out as a sort of workaround. I don't know if it's going to be physically possible to introduce anything like that on an early gen.
They could do it one with HDMI 1. No, they couldn't, could they? They'd still have to encode. Yeah.
You know, that's something which realistically does extend beyond the construct of the forum.
Sky, Virgin, BT, 4K Blu-ray. I mean, those are 4 things already that are going to require it. And as Ed says, I think Sky will be pretty big and popular, even if the other 3 won't be.
I suppose it gets more complicated. Someone may have to explain this to me. In terms of if you've got 4K Netflix support in your smart TV, they're not subject to the same encryption system.
It
can't change for later on or retrospectively.
No, as far as I'm aware, it has to have the HEVC decoder in it for it to work in the first place. Yeah. And in terms of licensing, I think it's a one-hit wonder. So you could find it 4 or 5 years down the line if the standard's developing. You might find it being dropped. You don't know. Right. Like you said last week, Ed, we're moving into quite a disposable future when it comes to when you're talking about digital stuff. It's dead easy for people to move on. Well, for some people.
In fact, we mentioned last week some things have already been dropped on older TVs and stuff, haven't they?
Yeah, totally.
Or not supported, rather.
So yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I think HDCP 2.2 is going to be a big thing, and it's something the industry is going to have to. You would hope, at least TVs from the last year or two, there's something that the manufacturers can do to make them compatible. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of angry people who have bought 4K
Well,
TVs.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how big the installed base is. I mean, we've seen some sales numbers, and they aren't huge, but they're still sizable. There's still a sizable number of people who have bought TVs over the last 3 years, Ultra HD 4K TVs. Hopefully, the majority this year, or all the ones this year, I'm pretty sure. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark, but they do support HDCP 2.2.
I can't think of one that didn't.
No, not can I. But last year, I think quite a few maybe didn't. There was a lot of fiddling going around with them. Yeah. I mean, there were people that were doing HDCP 2.2 on top of 1.4, so there were,
Yeah, you could switch the input in settings, couldn't you?
It's a bit of a minefield, though, going back historically over the last few years. Not for any fault of the manufacturers necessarily. I think things were changing and developing at the same time. So you're going to do what's currently available when you're leasing a new TV. But I guess that's the whole point now. I mean, I think that's what they thought last year. We need to sit down and get some sort of coordinated plan here amongst all the manufacturers, because we don't want to end up people using different terms and confusing the consumer. Because HDR is the good example, isn't it? Where it's, even reading totally. Feedback threads on our, and this is amongst enthusiasts who are into this kind of stuff. And there's plenty of confusion out there. We've discussed it a couple of times now, and there is still clearly some confusion. It's a complex subject that needs to be delivered in a. I mean, also you can look at it, you can see it. If you're getting a demonstration, you think, oh, that looks nice. But trying to explain that to a consumer in an easy, digestible, understandable way is actually going to be bloody hard for them, I think.
Yeah. Maybe the HD Alliance can use Land of Confusion by Genesis as their theme music.
Yeah. with the spitting image puppets. That'd be
well, I imagine they probably wouldn't want to go all in, but yeah, it would be just set things up nicely, wouldn't it?
I guess one way of getting around the AVR conundrum, Steve, would be to do the same as what a lot of manufacturers did when 3D came along, and that's to have two HDMI outputs on the back of the player. So your 4K Blu-ray player, if it has two HDMI outputs, you have one to the AVR, one to your display that has got HDCP 2.2.
That would be a solution. I'm trying to think now. The Samsung Ultra HD Blu-ray player that was at IFA, I mean, I don't think it was a completely final model, but certainly the one that was on, the two that were on display, they only had one HDMI output at the rear. But maybe they'll be putting a second one in for them. That would be an obvious and simple solution, and an easy way to avoid that particular problem.
Well, it's one way of getting sales, isn't it? Appeal to the base that's already there. That's going to buy into it straight away, and may have AVRs or other equipment that's out of date and needs a second HDMI to feed audio. So,
like you say, there's precedent for that already with 3D.
Yeah,
before.
Well, Panasonic did it with all theirs, didn't they?
Yeah, and he did it. Sony did it with a couple. Oppo do it on all theirs. It's definitely precedent for it being done. So. I guess at CES we'll find out, because the idea is that the Ultra HD Alliance will create a logo, a recognisable logo, and a branding system. So this TV hits certain criteria.
Is this worldwide or is this just US?
No, this is meant to be worldwide. And if you look at everyone involved, they do have involved in this now pretty much all, or certainly all the big players. The one area where they are lacking at the moment, and they admitted this in the interview, is they don't have any members yet from European broadcasters, so Sky or the Sky and the European satellite broadcasters, and also obviously the internet distributors like BT and Virgin. They aren't there yet. They were holding meetings with them just after the show. They were going to be doing that. Clearly, they want them on board. They want as many people on board as they possibly can get. And that's less of a priority, I think, because obviously there are still debates going on, discussion going on about broadcasting standards. So it's not quite as urgent, I think, as they felt getting Ultra HD Blu-ray and streaming to a degree lined up, ready for next year. I think that was their priority, and then they're going to move on to broadcasters.
Yeah.
But the idea is it's worldwide. It's not a US-centric initiative at all.
The thing that we keep coming back to is that CES, it has to be the hard launch this time. We had the damp squib that's been this year. IFA, we thought they were going to push for Christmas. They really have to get the act together by January this year to get the momentum behind the whole format. Otherwise, they're going to run the risk of not getting that market penetration. If you're there at the start of the year, before the kit comes out for the year ahead, that's the ideal place to start, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, and I think they know that too. Well, they said to me that they will be announcing, there'll be, obviously, in terms of the UHD Alliance, it's going to be everything, but in terms of Blu-ray, they will be announcing them, players and discs at IFA, with the intention of them being in the stores in the US in January, and then in Europe in early spring.
Yeah, and
I'd say clearer than that, really.
Obviously going to be Fox titles that are the first ones along. Any betting yet on what we're going to get? I mean, obviously Kingsman's been there in the PR material, so I think we could take that as a given.
They've announced 9 films. Off the top of my head, I can't remember all of them. I know certainly Kingsman, Fantastic Four, Exodus, Gods and Kings, Life of Pi. What else did they have on that list?
Anything worth watching?
This is a problem. I mean, I don't mean to be... Well... I'm deliberately trying to be positive here, but Kingsman is the only one of that list that I'd want to watch.
I'm just pulling your leg,
Well, I tell you what, we'll talk about this later when we go through the movies coming out this weekend, but The Martian opens on Wednesday, and that's a Fox title, so that would be a pretty awesome looking...
That opens on Wednesday? Oh, that might just be my first visit to the cinema this year.
Mm. So anyway, Fox definitely, they've already announced it this year.
Is that your short review?
Followed by Spectre, followed by Star Wars. 3 this year, blimey.
Oh, I just love that response, Steve. Brilliant. Good.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, So Fox have already announced some titles, and they appear to be really bullish. I've got to say. I mean, the president of the UHD Alliance,
The United States.
I was going to say
Obama.
Stay for a second. The president of the UHD Alliance is also the head of technology at Fox, and he was very. They appear to be very, very bullish about Ultra HD Blu-ray. Which
if he's not, who's going to be? To be fair.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, but we've also certainly I know that Sony have announced some stuff, and so have Warner. So there's in terms of their HDR partner. So it looks like they'll be there.
But you just know Sony's going to do something different, don't you?
Yeah.
Don't you?
They've already gone for Dolby Vision.
Dolby Vision, haven't they?
HDR10.
So there's going to be something else there, like Super Bit or.
Yeah, well, actually, a couple of their Blu-rays are coming out soon, aren't they? They're remastered in 4K Blu-rays with Dolby Atmos soundtracks, which is clearly stuff they've been working on for 4K, and have thought we'll squeeze a bit more cash out of it before we do that.
Out of you specifically.
Yes, yeah. Well, yes, I have put orders in for all of them. So yeah, I'm still confident that we'll get a big launch at CES. Like Ed said last week, if they don't do that, if they miss that date, they're buggered.
It just makes it really difficult if they're
need
not
to have a big launch at the beginning of the year,
and
really get people's attention.
Yeah, and it's a good time to build momentum for the following Christmas. Build it up, get your economies of scale in place during the year, and then you can have the blitz in 2016, Christmas 2016, and really push it to market. That's where it would work. That's what you'd hope, Ed. I mean, you used to work in the industry. You'd hope that they're looking that far ahead and thinking, well, that's what we should be aiming for.
Yeah, a year's worth of work. You do very early adopters, cynically speaking, use them as beta testers for real world testing with equipment out in the field. Stuff that may not have bothered anyone in the development phase that can be ironed out and handled. I mean, the kicker at the moment, and I have been trying to find this out, but I'm afraid it's not as easy as it is. Well, it's never very easy, and it's particularly opaque at the moment. Is working out beyond the major house brands if platform developers like MediaTek and that lot are in the process of working up their own solutions, because MediaTek is one of those enormously important companies that you haven't really that pass frequently unnoticed. I mean, the Oppo machines and many others at core level are based on MediaTek development platforms, and I don't know if they are in the process of working up a 4K Blu-ray platform. If they are, it's a big shot in the arm to the format, because that's where conversely, both a lot of high-end players, and then also in terms of sort of the ability for supermarkets to come out with some exciting brand name product to actually flog alongside it. That's where it would come from. So you have to hope that they are active, but I haven't been able to find that out.
Of course, the other thing that's missing this time around that was there when DVD was around and when Blu-ray launched, and that was new games consoles. It was the PS3 that really pushed Blu-ray to. I mean, I remember going out and buying a PS3 just to be a Blu-ray player, because it was one of the first ones to market with the capability. We don't have that this time around, so it'll be interesting to see exactly what the uptake is going to be, because these players are not going to be cheap when they hit the market to start with. I'm going to put my money on £300 minimum.
Yeah, I'm going to say something here. I can't name any names. This is pretty often, circumstantial evidence, hearsay if you like, but what I heard was a lot cheaper than you think, and we're not going to make any more normal Blu-ray players from now on. It's just going to be Ultra HD 4K Blu-ray players.
To be fair, that Samsung at IFA didn't look like an expensive product.
No, it did not.
Let's be clear about this. I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but this wasn't launch the high end first and trickle down. If they want more than 300, 350 for that, that's wildly optimistic.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the prices are, because I'm just going on past experiences with formats launching. It's always been that and above for the first generation.
That is true, but I don't think they have that option.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting to see if that's the case, because if they do come in with a £150 player, that could kick the format on quite quickly.
Well, yeah. I mean, also if it's bundled with if television manufacturers are bundling them, that's another sort of area of potential, so to speak.
it might have to be that when you're looking at likes of Samsung and Sony and Panasonic. It might be that you buy a 4K TV, you get your 4K Blu-ray player. That's one way. You take a hit, but it's one way of getting some kit out there and start building a market for it.
Even when we're trying to be very positive, it doesn't ooze out of us, does it?
I've got to say, I am excited for it. It's just that I will pick and choose my content because it's not going to be cheap when it comes to content. It's going to be more expensive than Blu-ray, and Blu-ray is still hovering around about the £12 to £15 mark.
Yeah, the average price is probably $14.99 for a new Blu-ray on day of release. Obviously, they fall in value pretty quickly after that. But
so you got to think $19.99.
$19.99 seems to me like a sweet point for pricing initially. But you think about, like I said this last week, that if Ed took the wife to the cinema, I know she's got a Cineworld card, Ed, but theoretically speaking, if you went to the cinema with your wife and you didn't have a Cineworld card and you bought 2 tickets, that's £20. Plus you got parking and petrol. You've got to get a babysitter for William.
Plus the amount of alcohol I need to consume prior to it, so I don't kill everyone around me.
And whatever. Suddenly you're looking at £50 for a night out of the flicks. So $19.99 to sit at home and watch it in cinema quality. That seems like a pretty good deal to me.
To be honest, I've not had. I was actually unconcerned by the comments on media pricing last week. That you're for those reasons and more, and the fact I'm so inured to spending painful sums of money on records that £20 seems legit. So,
but like you, Phil, I'll be quite choosy about what I buy on Ultra HD 4K Blu-ray.
Yeah,
partly my Blu-ray purchases have already fallen down anyway because I'm not buying like TV series on Blu-ray, for example, or a lot of films I've seen at the cinema that I would have bought on spec, but now won't bother because I've seen them at the flicks.
Yeah, so, and I won't buy them because I've read your reviews and but yeah, I mean, when DVD came around, and I guess it was a different time. Blah blah blah. Play the music. I was quite prepared to spend my spare cash, my disposable income on DVDs and stuff like that. And I'd be buying stuff that I hadn't been to the cinema to see or anything like that. Just buying it on spec, and I made a lot of mistakes that way. And I think I bought about 1,500 Blu-rays.
Yeah, I'm willing to
DVDs.
Bill.
When it comes to Blu-rays, I've probably bought about 50, and it's like stuff that I really want to watch.
You bought 50 Blu-rays? Well, not in total.
No, there's probably more than that, to be honest with you. I mean, I've got a full rack sitting through there.
Haven't you got a pile the size of you waiting to be watched?
Yeah, but that's a mix of DVD and Blu-ray and stuff. I still buy DVDs now and again. Yeah, if it's stuff that you can't get on Blu-ray.
I'm willing to bet that you, like me, probably have a few DVDs knocking around that you bought back in the late 90s.
I have
bothered getting around to watching.
I think they're at my mum's. I've got 2 massive big cardboard boxes full.
There is an issue here. Again, I have to choose my levels of negativity carefully. But obviously, we've been discussing new release Ultra HD material. There's a sort of Joseph Heller-esque problem here that half the interest in the format will be re-releasing stuff that people really want to see in UHD, but that's only going to happen if you reach a critical threshold of units in the field.
Yeah. And
you get the feeling that without one side taking a punt, it's just not necessarily going to work.
Although, looking at it positively, when we moved to DVD, we had to wait for the big titles, like catalogue titles. We waited a long time for Star Wars.
And
Spielberg
stuff took forever to come out.
Spielberg stuff and Indiana Jones took forever. Then look at the Blu-ray releases of those. Within 12 to 18 months of the format being launched, some of those titles were hitting the market.
Yeah. Star Wars was still bloody late, but it was a lot quicker around than it was with DVD,
Yeah, a lot quicker around. So, fingers crossed that... And again, it's going to come down to the content and the quality of content. I mean, you're going to have people like us, Steve, who will go and buy things because it's got great picture and great sound and it's a shit movie. We do that.
That's half my collection. For
Transformers and stuff like that. But you got to have that for testing purposes. If it's the minimum amount of viewing time spent, but again, it's going to come down to the titles that come on the format, and they have to come on the format quite quickly, I would say, for it to be a success.
So I would say, well, I mean, it looks as though that might well be the case because we've been hearing stories for the last few years. I mean, I know once again from talking to the president of technology or the head of technology at Fox, and he said that every
Jesus
time
Christ,
they get a
name dropping all the bloody
every time they get a film out of the vaults to do a new transfer or a restoration, it's at 4K. So they've got a library of not just new stuff coming out, but also catalog movies that are ready to go in 4K, and they've been doing HDR transfers as well for these films. So they're ready to go in that sense. So we can see stuff a lot quicker.
There was a lot of big classics like The Wizard of Oz and what was the other one, Gone with the Wind and stuff. They were all done at 8K, not that long ago.
Resolution, yeah.
And then obviously down converted to 4K and then down converted to 2K for Blu-ray. So those exist as well. And
last year there was the news that Star Wars, the original Star Wars films, the ones shot on the actual film, had been restored at 4K. Now I don't know what version that was, but that again suggests that they've got something ready to go if they want to.
And Wizard of Oz, that's going to be one of the HDR things to search out, definitely, because I think Mike So gives a few hints there, and when I was at Technicolor, it was pretty obvious that that's one of the big titles that they're interested in.
Well, this is good. I mean, it's absolutely necessary. It can't just be a diet of new release material.
No, you have to have the catalogue stuff in there, definitely.
You need a bit of both, don't you? You want some new stuff, because I'll definitely be buying. I mean, come next year, my view would be I'll only buy Ultra HD 4K Blu-rays.
Yeah, but Steve, you're going to have to go and buy a 4K projector and a 4K TV.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to say, though. The interesting thing is, because there was another debate going on about not just pricing, but do you want the 4K disc and the Blu-ray? And I was saying I want both. And the reason I want both is because you can watch the movie, the 4K movie on your 4K system, but then you've got the Blu-ray if you want to watch the extras on the telly in the lounge or something like that. So for me, that makes sense. And the other interesting thing is that The Martian, using that as an example, that's a native 3D movie. And that's not supported on 4K. So you'll get the 4K movie in 2D and also the Blu-ray with a 3D version, perhaps, as an alternative. So lots of variables there. But
I know I wasn't going to be negative, but 3D, really?
I'm going to go see in 3D on Friday night. So,
Dick.
So there.
What did you say, Ed?
Dick.
I think he's a fanboy. Did you see him reeling off all his Apple stuff earlier on?
Yeah.
Fanboy.
Who started it, Phil?
Fanboy. Right, so let's stay with 4K and let's look at basically stuff that we've been reviewing recently, and certainly the price of 4K TVs is starting to drop quite rapidly. And we're not talking about entry-level models either. We're starting to talk about the CX680, which the review went up last week, that I've been looking at from Panasonic. I mean, you're looking at a pretty feature-packed TV there. It's got all the new smart stuff from Firefox OS. It had all the 4K apps that are available at the minute, so you had native 4K stuff native-ish 4K stuff to watch on it through Amazon and Netflix. Really nice slim screen, great picture quality, and out of the box, and it was a brand new retail out of the box, not delivered in a flight case, so it was a proper retail product. Out of the box, stunningly close to being accurate.
Is that the Panasonic?
The Panasonic, yeah. I mean,
they've been so accurate this year. So
you got to think, £800. That is a cracking little deal for a 50-inch screen, which you can't use it in pitch black. It's an LED LCD TV. You can't use any of these in pitch black surroundings without seeing drawbacks on screen. So as long as you've got some ambient light, and we always say have some ambient light in the room, whether it's a bias light behind the screen or whatever, in those conditions, really, really stonking, good picture, great value. And there's some other screens as well I've noticed recently, 50, 55-inch screens, starting to hit the $799, $899 price mark. And they also have most of the features. I mean, one of them's a Samsung mark.
Yeah, the one I've just reviewed is Sony 8505. It's 55-inch. I think it started life out at £1,900. It's now $999. 55-inch top-ish of the range Sony TV.
And that'll be HDCP 2.2 because the Panasonic was.
Yes.
On
all inputs.
Yeah, completely future-proof. The only thing is no HDR, but they're not HDR screens.
And the colour gamut would be probably Rec 709 or just above it.
It was a bit wider than 709, but it was nowhere near DCI. And you would only put it in that if you were bringing the colour points back using the CMS. Otherwise, stick it in native, which is almost bang on 709.
I worded it slightly controversially, but it does seem as though pricing is already plummeting on these TVs, and you're kind of wondering.
Yeah, but we've just been having that conversation about 4K Blu-ray, Steve. Haven't we? We think it should be a bit higher, but actually in reality it's probably going to be a bit cheaper. And looking at these screens, I think that, again, Ed, you've worked in the business, but I think certainly the other side of the coin, you have to look at getting some product out there at a reasonable price to start building up word of mouth, start building up a marketplace.
I think there's a couple of different things at work here. You've got at least one brand that still is just, their business model involves just market saturation, just selling the vast majority of their sets at very low margin points, but just selling an awful lot of them. I don't know, with, let's face it, the LED LCD televisions have been in production for some time now, so the actual refinements of the manufacturing process are all in place. You could, I suppose, cynically see this as an opportunity to get as much out of these plants as you can.
I don't think you're being cynical. I think manufacturers will tell you that,
and that would certainly shape things.
I mean, I've had it said to me, Steve, you'll have had it said as well, that really what they're trying to do is push on and try and make the best, well, they say this, they're trying to make the best LED, LCD TVs they can, but basically it's about selling inventory that's obviously sitting there.
Yeah, they're trying to squeeze every last ounce out of this technology before they're forced to move on to something else. And I guess, as Ed's just said, if you're using existing infrastructure, which doesn't require a great deal of retooling to make a 4K panel as opposed to a 2K panel, there's probably a lot more margin even in the cheaper TVs than it would get from a full HD TV now.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what cost Plasma its life, isn't it, Ed? The
yes.
fact that
it
couldn't
existed
retool
in too smaller quantities, and all of that. And then, obviously, if you let's face it, at the moment we only have two large brands who have gone OLED, and both of them have gone with the same sort of nuts and bolts panel area. Let's face it, once other brands start coming on board with that, they will be compelled to compete as closely as they can on price with LG. But whether the years that LG have sort of had sort of building up experience and, well, let's be cynical, not releasing sets, but sort of plugging away in the background, whether that's going to start to count, and then televisions proportionally get more expensive after that point, we don't know. I mean, obviously the market dictates they can't get that much more expensive, but something will probably have to give as and when more OLEDs enter the market from brands that haven't been producing them up until now, unless everyone ends up buying them from LG and doing different things with them.
I think CES this year, I think we're going to see, and in fact, I'm so confident I'm going to put £10 on the table. Who wants my £10?
Well, I don't, because I'll preview the conversation you had, but
I definitely don't. You know something. Ed?
Deshed, I thought I was going to make an easy 10
insider trading. Okay. What's your bold proposal, Mr. Hinton?
It's no good now. Steve's let the cat out the bag that we've actually been told it, so I can't say it now.
Or is it Sony?
I couldn't possibly say.
No, can't comment on this. But yeah, you'd expect to see more manufacturers other than Samsung, I expect, picking up LG panels and putting out OLED TVs.
That puts Samsung in a strange position, doesn't it? Because basically, they're never going to get into bed with LG display.
No, never. And so what they are doing at the moment is basically poo-pooing OLED.
Exactly.
And really pushing LCD down everyone's throat. So, I mean, unless they're working on OLED of their own in the background.
Well, they worked on it before, didn't they? I think I think they've just shut up about it now because they knew they couldn't get one out the door as cheap as LG. So they're working on it just quietly now.
Well, they have to be, Mark. Otherwise they are. I don't think I know of anybody else that's produced. Not even the Chinese at the minute. I don't think are producing OLED panels. That might change because they can produce them under license, or you'd assume that they're gonna. That's one way that they could expand the market and start producing this stuff under license.
Yeah, well, there's lots of things to play out, but for the moment, it means that whilst you've got existing proven technology, which is relatively cheap to implement, that's what people will be doing, with considerable determination, and that sort of goes some way to explaining pricing as it currently stands.
I think what surprises me isn't just that the prices have plummeted the way they have so precipitously over the last year or so, but also that, as you said, Phil, these are good TVs. We're not talking about sort of like cheap, no brand rubbish here. but real quality tellies that are going for really attractive prices. So you're getting the performance, and maybe not all the features you might want, but certainly enough performance and future-proofing that it's going to be a valid 4K TV for the next 5 years.
To be honest with you, something like that CX680, I was really not put off at all using that in the living room as my workhorse TV for watching catch-up, watching the news, that kind of thing, the odd documentary, and using Netflix and some of the smart features. I was quite at home with it. I found it, picture quality was more than good enough for that type of role. Definitely. Excuse you.
Mute your mic, Ed. You Mr. Creosote.
I would like a waffle condom right now if anyone's got one.
Dear me. I think somebody has to go and de-wind Ed.
So
There's no one here to burp me, I'm afraid.
Get the cat to sit on your tummy.
I'll teach you to eat your son's Farley rusks.
Right, so, I mean, the entry point is getting lower and lower. It's going to be lower again probably come Christmas, and we then move into sales season. So it'll be interesting to see what the take-up is. Certainly, people should be confident enough now just to double-check that HDCP 2.2, but most of the sets are now up to that standard, aren't they? I don't think there's anything on the market, from the major brands anyway, this year's models that don't have that, as far as I'm aware.
I'm pretty sure that all of this year's models
You want to check for HDMI 2.0A as well, though, because they've not all got
If
that.
it's-
Have they?
If it's HDR supported,
That's not that many TVs.
there's not that many TVs with HDR on, so yeah.
True.
And then next year, Phil, we know from talking to manufacturers, I think you'll be hard put to find a full HD telly, and certainly not bigger than 32 inches.
Well, a lot of them are talking about 70-30 split next year.
Yeah.
So
It's going to be mostly old.
We
Certainly
won't be
anything
reviewing
big.
any.
well, I mean, how many have we reviewed this year? 3?
A couple, 2, 3, yeah.
Yeah, I've done one, I think.
I've done 2. I think I've done. Yeah, I've done 2.
One, I think.
So, yeah, not many. When you consider how many we did last year, and 4K was the the rare screen to get in. Just shows you how quickly things change.
I'll buy the Wizard of Oz in HDR if they do that.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I would.
Phil, sorry.
Sorry,
Did you see the Wizard of Oz in HDR?
No, but when we were at, I mean, obviously,
When you asked him that question, he seemed to give the indication that it has been done.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, so when I spoke to him, he said he was working on quite a number of catalogue titles. He was going through and regrading them at 1,000 nits for HDR. So he wouldn't tell me which movies, but if you think about, Technicolor do it for just about everybody, so it could be anything. But certainly the connections there with Technicolor when it comes to The Wizard of Oz, because obviously the 3-strip Technicolor, it was one of the first films ever to be made with that process. So it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Maybe they could just junk episodes 1, 2, and 3 and remake them on film properly.
Return to Oz is actually on Sky Movies on Demand at the moment. That film's properly messed up.
That is a dark, dark Disney movie, if ever I've seen one.
I don't think I've ever seen it, to be honest.
It's bleak at times,
it's
and the
seriously.
Wheeler things are profoundly unsettling.
Right.
Yeah, it's really good actually, but it failed miserably because it's not a
Yeah,
kid's
and also
film.
it does also count as perhaps the longest gap between film and sequel in history. A snappy 28 years or something, isn't it?
Oh no, you could.
No, it's longer than that.
1985.
It was a good 40 odd years between those.
Yeah.
It was 45.
What was
years
it? 1939 was Wizard of Oz.
39, and that
Hang on,
film was
guys.
83 or 84, something like
85.
that.
So,
85. Yeah. So yeah.
have I seen it? I don't know if I've seen it.
I don't think I have seen it, but one of the things that really stood out watching the Blu-ray version of Wizard of Oz recently was you could see the map paintings and
Yeah.
the wind
you can really
moving
see
them.
that.
You could really see all
See
that.
where the set ends, and there's a big backdrop just beyond,
Still look good though.
Oh yeah, look good.
and you can see the wires that hold the monkeys up, can't you? That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
What, there was wires holding a monkey?
Those monkeys are scary, though. I remember as a kid, they were quite scary. And the reason I was mentioning episodes 1, 2, and 3 is because apparently there's a rumour, and I hope to God this isn't true, but there are rumours going around that Hayden Christensen is currently in training for a cameo in episode 8.
How? No, that couldn't have worked.
Hayden Christensen played Anakin Skywalker.
But that couldn't have worked. He would have to be a ghost.
Flashback, maybe. Don't know. I mean, like I said, it's only a rumour, and it doesn't seem likely.
God, I
because
hope not.
Just said, Phil, he's dead. But well, yes, he could be. Maybe he's playing as a because obviously he was there as a ghost at the end of the remastered or buggered up, depending which way you look at it, version of Return of the Jedi. So yeah, that's a scary rumor.
You'd have to hope that now it's in different hands and away from Lucas that they wouldn't make that mistake.
Well, I watched all of Star Wars Rebels, and I have to say I really enjoyed it. I thought it was excellent. There's some really good stuff in that.
I couldn't find it. I went to Tesco's and it wasn't there.
And it was getting towards the end. It's really good, and I'm really looking forward to season 2 now. I think there's potential there. Really.
Yeah, but Clone Wars was good as well because
that was too. And same guy, Dave Filoni. Although Lucas was a lot more hands-on with Clone Wars, he's not involved at all with Rebels, and I think that extra bit of freedom, and the fact it's between episodes 3 and 4, so it's not. The problem with Clone Wars was slightly that you knew what was going to happen to the characters because you knew they couldn't die because they obviously were going to be in the third film, whereas most of the characters in Rebels, are new characters that theoretically could be killed or have something happen to them. And there's some great cameos and surprise appearances as well. I won't spoil it for you, Phil, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I watched it pretty much all in one sitting. It takes about 5 hours, but it's really good.
Good. I'll have to go and check Tesco's tonight. It wasn't there last week. I looked.
They did something quite cool as well. A lot of the production design is based upon Ralph McQuarrie's original paintings.
Right.
So they look like Star Wars, but not quite. So it's slightly different, which is nice too. Like I said, there's robots walking around that look like the original design for C-3PO, which was slightly different and that sort of stuff. 3PO looks like 3PO, but they changed it for other robots. It's got a nice look to it. It's good.
Yep. Good stuff. So we're going to move on to movies, and we're done with hardware. I think.
Sorry, I just had to vanish.
Good hour.
I had to vanish there. The people at Motorola have just tried to collect my phone with no warning that they were coming, and also with no information from the courier about who was collecting stuff. So I've got a collection for a package that's 1 kilo. Who from?
Yeah, the number of times we laugh, but the number of times that's happened where I've had 2 or 3 TVs ready to go back.
I sent one back to the wrong place.
I've had that before.
It's a standing policy here that unless you specify which courier you're using and they know who they're collecting on behalf of, you run the risk of receiving. You might get lucky and get something massively more expensive than what you sent, but equally you might lose out quite badly. But no, they sent me the shipping label for that at 4:00 on Saturday afternoon, and they've just tried to collect now. I mean, it's still. I haven't got any of the packaging sorted or anything like that. No emails, no nothing. Absolute genius. Well done, Motorola.
Yes.
Nicely done. And I dare say that means I've missed my one shot, and I will now have to get it to them myself.
I knew it was too good to be true. I knew we were going to have a rant at some point.
Sounded like Josh Widdicombe. Ed did. He sounded like Josh Widdicombe.
I don't know.
He doesn't sound West Country at all.
I mean, he did then on that rant, just then.
Really?
My inner yokel.
Yokel. Your inner yokel.
Have you ever done a thing where the guy comes to collect something from you one day and then brings it back to you the next?
Yeah, I've had that.
Yeah.
That's happened to me a couple.
Well, ever since I bought myself a huge graffiti-sized Stablo marker, and I now just scrape through every single barcode that's on a box.
Yeah, well, that's what I do now to that particular.
Doesn't happen as much.
Yeah, well, it was one that was supposed to go to market, came to me, so they arranged for it to be recollected, so it was recollected. Next again morning, he came back and delivered it back to me. And it's like, no, I just gave you, and it was the same guy, and I said, do you not remember, I just gave you this package yesterday? No, I don't remember that, mate.
It's like, do you not remember being in the same house yesterday with the same box?
Well, I still think I've got the best story ever, and that's the guy getting his van nicked. He's standing at my door.
He probably doesn't necessarily agree with you on that, but
yeah. So that's all for hardware. We'll move on to movie news next. Okay, Steve, what's at the cinema?
Cinema last weekend was Solace, which is a new film starring Anthony Hopkins as a psychic who helps the police with investigations, and Colin Farrell as another psychic. And I saw
the trailer for this, Steve. I just wanted to jump in there at that point. 1996.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? You're thinking like this.
Yeah,
I've seen this film a few times before. I'm thinking of what was that one with Denzel Washington? Fallen. That was it. Denzel Washington in Fallen. It really reminded me of that. And a whole host of Seven, of course, and a whole host of other films from that period, that sort of late 90s period. That's when it should have been made. Yeah, basically, there's a serial killer, and he's obviously one step ahead of the police, and that's because basically he can foresee what's going to happen, and then you got the other psychic coming in to help out. All I can say is I hope it was a big paycheck for the pair of them. He got 5 out of 10 from Sharuna, and that seems about right based upon what she wrote. So yeah, it didn't look at all appealing. I remember watching the trailer at cinema and thinking like, I can avoid that like the plague. So that's what came out of the weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a straight to disc normally, wouldn't it?
Totally.
I think it's
I'm
just.
surprised it got cinema release. You're right, actually. It sounds more like a DT direct to video.
I think it's just probably the.
Are we
the,
now
the names
starting to see the wind down towards Star Wars? Is this literally just?
Yes.
It's like nothing's doing stuff that's been sitting around ponging up the pre-release vaults. Just get it out there.
Yeah.
It does what it does. Wipe the slate clean, and no one's going to give.
I mentioned it last week, but after the 4th of December, nothing. There's nothing coming out.
Well, the only big film before that is Bond, isn't it? I mean, that's this month. Well, I say this. Well, yeah, it's October.
There's a couple of big titles coming out. There's the last Hunger Games movie in November as well. That'll be a big release. And there's obviously Spectre. But yeah, they are winding down for Christmas, and basically just everyone's gone on holiday while Star Wars takes over the entire world.
Well, the thing is, have they not booked every IMAX screen in the UK for 3 weeks?
Yeah, they are. They are going to make a phenomenal amount of money. If only because there's nothing else for people to go and see at the cinema, frankly.
Yeah. Although you did mention films coming up this week. If I can manage it, I probably would go at the cinema to see The Martian.
I am really looking forward to this. I've read the book, which is excellent. If you haven't read it, I thoroughly recommend it. Looking at the trailer, it looks as though it stays very close to the book, which is excellent. It's Ridley Scott. Who better to make sci-fi and things looking cool and being on Mars? The plot's great. It's got Matt Damon as an astronaut who's stranded on Mars, and basically it's going to take 4 years for the mission to get back and rescue him. He's got to stay alive for that long. It's really, really good, and this is probably one of my, along with Star Wars, the film I'm looking forward to the most this year. I can't wait to see it. Really looking forward to it. And it was shot native 3D if you're still interested in 3D.
No, only you, Steve.
I mean, it's only me, but yeah, I think it's going to look superb in terms of Ridley Scott. He's such a beautiful eye, but in terms of the story as well, if it stays close to the book, it's a really, really exciting and thoroughly researched and realistic. So it's not like Interstellar, which was cobblers. This is going to be proper science fiction, as in science fact almost, but with a bit of fiction thrown in. So.
You see, that's the only thing though. In Interstellar, Matt Damon was a stranded.
You see him on Graham Norton because he was talking about that. He's like, I made a film about a guy stuck on a planet on his own. Then I took a break for a couple of a year and a half off, and then they offered me another part about a bloke stuck on a planet on his own. I was like, you sure you want me for this? I want to get typecast. Yeah, this is going to be everything Interstellar wasn't, in my opinion, i.e. proper decent science fiction as opposed to a load of gobbledygook and nonsense.
As long as Hans Zimmer's not doing the score again.
Oh, someone described the score. It was like Hans Zimmer fell asleep at his his organ, which about sums up the score of that film.
Actually, I'm on a completely different page. I actually really quite liked his score for that.
Interstellar.
Yeah, especially if you got a good subset up in your room. But
I thought it was
I was like, ding. Every 5 seconds. It was an awful film. Such cobblers. Just bad on every level. Just the more I think about it, the more angry I get about it.
Okay, well, let's move on to what else is coming out this week.
The Intern, which is a comedy with Anne Hathaway as a CEO of a startup company, and Robert De Niro as a 70-year-old intern. De Niro really should retire, in my opinion, at this point. Please, Bob, retire.
Yeah, you don't have to tell us any more about that film. That just
that's enough, isn't it?
Yeah, you just know it's going to suck.
Was it like that Blackadder goes forth with the Charlie Chaplin telegraph? Yeah, please stop.
Yes, exactly. And Cassandra is going to see The Intern actually in a pre-release screening this week, and The Martian is being reviewed by Kaz, who's going to see it on Wednesday night.
When's that Bill Bryson Walk in the Woods thing out, or is that already out?
I think that's already come out. Something like this week.
It must be said, going back to saying Robert De Niro should retire, I would have said exactly the same thing to Robert Redford, but he does appear to. It does, obviously they've probably put every single good bit of the film in the trailer, but that looked, he wasn't being deadly serious. It actually looked almost sort of, well, I'm not going to use the word good, that's probably overdoing it, but it looked tolerable. which is the first time I could have said that about a Robert Redford film in some time.
Did he not do one recently where he got a lot of good praise? Was he the one that was in the one with the boat, the sailor?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Kirsty.
All
All is lost.
Yeah,
All is lost.
yeah.
That was good.
No, I think Redford's done. He
didn't act so much as just sit there looking wet and sad. For the last
And sunburned.
No, De Niro though has been churning out piece of shit after piece of shit for the last decade at least, or 20 years even. Yeah, I mean, it's just how much money has he got? A big tax bill or something? Because why is he still doing this stuff? It's a real shame too, because he was like the best actor of his generation, and to see him just doing this rubbish now, it's like.
I think the moment he did the Rocky and Bullwinkle film,
which he produced that too, so he's got no excuses there.
I didn't know that.
He had no excuses on that one, but yeah, it's been down.
Well, then if he produced it, then he's brave, because he would have put some of his own money up against that. Then obviously,
it probably explains why he's doing this. Pay back the money. Yeah, no, it's a real shame. I mean, things like Grudge Match. That's just some shockingly poor stuff he's been knocking out recently. Anyway, that's what's out this week, and then on Blu-ray terms, coming out today on the 28th, the day of recording. Spooks the Greater Good, which is the big screen.
I'm sorry, and somebody put the quote underneath Kaz's review, but every time somebody says the Greater Good to me, that's Sanford. That's it's Hot Fuzz. Sorry,
the Greater Good.
The Greater Good.
Yarp. Which I quite adored at the cinema actually, though it does really play like a long episode of Spooks, in all honesty. And also Man Up, which is a romantic comedy with Simon Pegg and American actress called Lake Bell, who does a really good English accent. In fact, one person said her English accent is better than Simon Pegg's.
Okay, so let's go back to Bond, because the theme song was released last week. And it seems, I was going to say, it seems to split people's opinions down the middle, but actually
it hasn't.
Not really.
It hasn't. I haven't heard anybody say that they actually like it. I mean, is the writing on the wall? I mean, I guess it's on the title. And he only took, 20 minutes to write this? I think it kind of...
20 minutes too long by the sounds of it.
Is it really the worst Bond song ever?
I've got to say, in my opinion, yes, because even the stuff that wasn't great Bond songs, like All Time High from Octopussy, I could still hum it. This was just the first 10 seconds. I thought, well, this sounds quite good, like a Bond song. And then after that, it's just this dirge.
No,
I don't know who Sam Smith is. I couldn't name one of his songs.
He's obviously got
he's
obviously got his trousers far too tight.
Yeah, he also loosened his belt a little bit.
I'm tempted in terms of not being able to hum them. It does. It then faces stiff competition from another Daniel Craig app. That Jack White.
I like that song.
I thought that was a shit
pile. I think I quite like it.
You see, for me, it has to be a female singing it. For me, the best Bond songs have been sung by females.
Oh, I don't know about that, Phil. What about Duran Duran? Awesome.
What about them?
Aha. Well,
Aha, the Living Daylights. That's a great.
Tom Jones, Thunderball. How does that does one explode like a thunderball anyway?
And Louis Armstrong's "We Have All the Time in the World." You know?
Oh, God, that's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I was never a big fan of Scaffold, but after hearing this Sam Smith effort, and
Skyfall is an absolute classic.
It's a masterpiece.
Come back, Adele, all is forgiven.
Yeah, you and your apple crumble can come back and do that again.
The last decent Bond record, in my probably worthless opinion, was "The World Is Not Enough." That was everything a Bond record should be.
No. I'll top that one by saying that I think, and it wasn't used as the theme tune, it was used at the end of the film, but Surrender by K.D. Lang is absolutely brilliant. And that was a proper Bond. I mean, they should have used that at the beginning instead of Tomorrow Never Dies. Who did that? Oh, Sheryl Crow, wasn't it? Crow. Yeah, that's a bit ropey. But Surrender by K.D. Lang is fantastic.
I mean, it must be said, don't get me wrong, it doesn't redeem the film. Actually, there's
Christmas Jones, the nuclear scientist.
Yes, well,
and there's a joke in that film that you saw coming a good 2 hours before it's done.
Well, there is that. But the other one, the thing is, I mean, ironically, the video for "The World Is Not Enough" was more, in many ways, more Bond-esque than the film it was attached to. And then there's another weird subset of Bond theme songs, which are good records, which are still not terribly well suited to being a Bond film soundtrack. And I would definitely say that the Chris Cornell "You Know My Name" from Casino Royale fits that criteria. It's a good record, but it's not a Bond song. And actually, in some regards, the Living Daylights, it's a great pop record, but not necessarily.
I mean, it's a good record, but
it does. What I will say is that its fundamentals then break down beautifully into the actual orchestral score for the Living Daylights, which is very, very good. Just listen to as a score. That's a very, very effective piece of film music.
What was the other one? Is it A View to a Kill?
Yeah, you know, she didn't like singing the word kill. Was it Gladys Knight, wasn't it?
No,
and
View to a Kill was
no, not View to a Kill, sorry.
License to Kill.
License to Kill, yeah.
Oh, that's
she didn't like singing kill, apparently. And there's a sort of like a hi-hat at the end of
sounds
the
like kilt.
It sounds like kilt, yeah. It's a
License
to kilt.
And then also another subset, you get Live and Let Die, which is in so many ways a terrible song, but a great one. And it's a great one. I mean, it's campy.
What about Lulu singing A Man with a Golden Gun, which is just pure innuendo from beginning to end?
He's got a powerful weapon.
Charges a million a shot. Oh, really?
But no, this current effort it fails on pretty much every level. I am indebted to the man on my Twitter feed who described it as sounds like a sad drunk man shouting into a saucepan, and that's just the best description I've heard of it.
For me though, there doesn't seem to be any scale to his voice. He's either screeching or he's too low. There doesn't seem to be any medium ground with him.
No, I would agree with that.
I also kind of like it when the Bond, I mean, that's not always the case, granted, I can think of a few exceptions, but generally the Bond theme tune includes the title of the film as a title of the song. There's a couple of exceptions.
That's not a consistent...
No, there are exceptions. So, like you said, we've got All Time in the World, which doesn't obviously include, but you'd be hard put to put a Major Secret Service into a song, I think. The Spy Who Loved Me, nobody does it better, but the
the lyrics are in there though. The Spy Who Loved Me.
The Spy Who Loved Me is in the lyrics.
Yeah.
All Time High, is definitely out there.
That was
You Know My Name and whatever the song was for Quantum of Solace. Better Way to Die or something like that, isn't it?
It left an indelible impression.
I noticed we've completely avoided Madonna here.
Now this is an odd one. It's again judged by the standards of Madonna's output at that time. It's a perfectly passable Madonna record. Again, it doesn't do terribly well as a Bond record. In fact, it doesn't do well at all as a Bond record. But I preferred it to. I say in terms of the Quantum of Solace one was dull. Tomorrow Never Dies one dull. At least it wasn't dull. Is the only thing I will say for it. Well produced as well. Not that really matters.
I'm trying to get my time frame. Was that round about the same time as she did the Hey Mr. DJ with Sasha Baron Cohen? Yeah.
That sort of
around
era.
that period, was it? That would have been what, 98 was it? 97, 98?
No,
it's 2002.
Yeah.
Was it really as late as that?
Well, hold on.
Yes.
Yeah, that was 2002. Die Another Day was 2002 anyway.
Because there's two Madonna albums back to back. There's Music, which was all BP, and then another one.
Murder on the Dance Floor or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Something on the Blood on the Dance Floor.
Which was also BP. Blood on the Dance Floor.
So, worst Bond song of all time?
Yeah, now
I think
they've
so.
gone through most of them. Yeah, I would have to say. I mean, Mark Commode made the thing saying, yeah, he wasn't that enamoured by it, but he wanted to see it in context.
Wasn't he listening to the wrong song though at that time?
I don't know. I don't know. I watched it on BBC News over the weekend. Like they do their film review thing on a Friday night, I think it is. And he said he wanted to see it in context, or he wanted to hear it in context.
To me, it sounds like he was given a load of clips and he's just stuck some music to it, and it'll probably look all right as a pop video.
Yeah, but I think what Commode was saying, he wants to see it with the titles, because obviously it's a title track, so he wants to see it in context in the film.
It's just I couldn't even tell you how it goes now. I've heard it a couple of times. It's just there's no melody in there. There's no tune. There's no chorus. There's nothing. It's just some bloke screeching into a saucepan, as Ed's just said. It's just it's just typical modern movie making, isn't it? You get to get a big well, I say big star. I'd never heard of the bloody guy until 2 weeks ago. But that says more about me, I think, than anything else. Yeah, get someone who's a big record seller in to sell a load of records. I mean, that worked well with Skyfall, but I think whatever Adela put out at that particular time would have sold a shed load of records.
Yeah,
what's
happened to her?
She said she's been having a baby and she's got a boatload of cash.
She also has a
millionaire
style
times over.
She also has a singing style which fundamentally destroys her own voice every 6 to 8 months. Don't get my wife started on that subject, and it will be informative but quite a long explanation. But yeah, she essentially has the seeds of her own voice frailties in her own style. So yeah,
that was why I didn't like Skyfall when it first came out. I didn't think it was necessarily a bad song. I just don't like her really affected way of singing. That sort of scaff, apple crumble. It's just really annoying. Bond
is a bit of an oddity. I mean, almost a goodly chunk of blockbustery films have got a song attached to them, and most of them don't in any way, shape or form even reach the stage of passing comment. So at the very least, in terms of Sam Smith's career, people are talking about him. So, there is only one thing worse than bad publicity. Yeah, it's no publicity.
I can't be dealing with Bond.
Thanks for your input, Mark. It's really appreciated taking part in that conversation there. And on that bombshell, that's it for the AVForums podcast this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
Anyone who spends a significant amount of time with me finds me disagreeable.
That's true. Mark Hodgkinson.
It's impressive to see a man feeding off his emotions.
And Ed Selley.
SWAT goes before dicks.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news and video. Plus, remember, leave us 5 stars on iTunes and we'll read your name out at the start of the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.